Thank you so much for joining me today, Gillian. It's an absolute pleasure to see you here today. So Gillian is going to be one of our speakers for the Logan Writers Festival, and just looking at her website gives us a lot of variety for what you write. I absolutely love how much there is there. So tell me a bit about your latest book.
My latest one, well, the one that was published in November last year is called Alone, and it's about a lady who husband has died and she's on a Brahman cattle stud in the outback on her own.
Ooh.
And her son that she's estranged from comes and wants his share of his father's estate. But he's horrible. He's not nice. She's frightened of him. And so that's sort of one theme that goes through the story, and it's about the mother-son relationship up to a point. But then she finds the body of a man in the creek, and she's not sure if it's related to her son or not.
Oh.
And then the police get involved, and the story sort of goes on, and she forms a friendship with the new policeman that's come into the area. But there's something about him, there's a few things that don't quite add up. So she's a little bit wary of him. And then a very, very handsome Irishman turns up who's got the gift of the Blarney.
Oh, absolutely.
But there again, there's something that doesn't add up. And the story moves on, and Rachel, but basically it's about actually managing on your own, and there are times when you need two people, which she finds out. And yes, it's the whole sort of thing. It sounds a bit convoluted, but
it sounds riveting. It sounds like the kind of book that me and my grandmother would have absolutely adored.
Well, it's got 5 stars, and it was actually one of the ones that was nominated for the Mars Franklin this year. Of course, wow. I didn't win it, but at least it was nominated, which to me was wonderful.
You know what? People always put like nominated for the Grammys or the Emmys or whatever's on like that. So I would definitely say that being nominated for a prize is a very big deal. So congratulations.
Oh, thank you. Especially the Mars Franklin, because that was amazing.
It sounds like it's a bit of a nearly like a dark drama sort of book, isn't it?
It is really. Yes, yeah. It is.
That, would you say that's your primary drama, or do you write in other genres? Sorry.
Yes, I do. I mean, I've written the children's books, which are obviously completely different, and I like writing about strong women.
Excellent.
But the themes are fairly different in a way. Each story is very different to the one before. Domestic violence I've covered. One book was about a woman coping with her mother who'd got dementia, and she was living within the family, and how that it can impact on the whole family. She takes her eye off the ball, and her teenage daughter goes off with somebody she shouldn't, and it's just the whole sort of thing that can, things that can go wrong, really.
It sounds like really real life problems, though. Like having these compacted into a single story might be a bit unbelievable, but having a family member with dementia, or having a teenage daughter who goes off with someone you don't like, or in even worst case scenarios, they're actually really common. So I feel like there'd be a lot of strong women who are able to relate to your stories. And yeah, that sort of strength can be found from within a story, which is something that I love.
Yes, yeah, that's right. And I think a lot of us, everybody really, you have something crops up in your life that you're not expecting, and you have to find strength to cope with it. So that's what I like writing about, really. Yeah, people finding their inner strength.
That's beautiful. I love that. How long have you been writing for?
Well, when I was little, I remember writing an essay when I was about 6 or 7, and the teacher was so thrilled with it. They read it out to the whole school, and I wanted to die. And when I first, because I didn't go to university, because in my day in England, nobody did, unless you were mega, mega rich. And my father sort of said, "What are you going to do?" And I said very grandly I was going to be an author. But then, of course, life got in the way, as it does, and I got married and had children. But I used to write little bits and pieces, and I must have started no end of different stories throughout my life. But it wasn't until this last few years, when I've actually had retired and had time to write, that I've actually sat down and written.
Hmm. Well, that's very common as well, and I find that a lot of people decide that retiring is going to be the time and place that they give themselves that space to write a story.
That's right.
Whereas when you've got younger people aiming to be authors, they put a lot of risk into that. They are risking a lot. But with 6 years of determined work, they tend to get it right.
That's very true. But looking back, I don't think, especially when I first left school, what was I, 17, 18, I wouldn't have had the life experience. I mean,
Mm.
I started to write this novel, and I probably got about 30 or 40,000 words into a book. But it was a historical novel. But looking back, I don't think it wouldn't have really been very good, because I hadn't got the life experience that I have now. So who
Oh,
knows?
you know what? I totally agree with that. I've done a lot of traveling prior to COVID. And
That is all. Yes.
yes, and it sounds like you've done a lot of traveling too. And just being able to write things that are like what people consider mundane, like the flavor and the texture of different foods, the smells of different locations. I used to frequent Southampton in England a lot, and something that always threw me was the beautiful cobblestone roads in certain sections, and then suddenly tarmac in others.
Yes.
It also surprised me that they had Gumtree as an app in the UK. Like that, I thought it was the gum trees are specifically Australian native sort of tree. And I was like, what is Gumtree in the UK? I love it.
Well, I had a big garden in the UK, and having come to Australia and fallen in love with gum trees, I actually grew. I had 16 different gum trees in my garden.
Oh, magical. What,
Yeah.
what one is your favorite?
I don't know. I I don't really think I've got a favourite. I some I'm not sure what they're called, with the beautiful red flowers that I couldn't grow in the UK. I used to think I wish I could grow them here.
Might be a
Um,
grevillea.
yes, yeah. Um, I like peppermint gum, because I love the little narrow leaves, and the paper barks are beautiful. And the
Mm.
ghost gums are beautiful, and you start
Mhm.
off, I can name lots of beautiful.
Oh, I remember one time I went to the snow and they have rainbow gums. So they have these
Oh,
rainbow swirls going up them, and you can only find them where it snows.
that's right, up on the high plains in Victoria. I've
Mm.
done horse trekking up there, and that's just wonderful.
Oh, excellent. Now, you've got a book coming out soon, don't you?
Yes, in November it'll be the sequel to Alone, and
Oh, wonderful.
that's called. I can actually show you the. I can show you the cover reveal. I don't know if you can see that. It's called Consequences.
Ooh. Oh, that's beautiful.
And that is, as I say, that's the sequel to Alone. So I can't give much away.
No, no, don't give anything away for it. People will have to read Alone first.
Yes, that's right. But no, I'm really pleased with the cover, and I'm pleased with the book too. It'll go down well. Hopefully it will anyway. And there again, it's set in the outback. And when I wrote Alone, I didn't make it in one particular spot. So I actually went on a book tour, and Roma features in the book. That's the only definite place, because I thought there's lots of people living round about in small towns and whatnot. And if I don't make it a specific place, then they can relate to it in their own place, if you see what I mean.
Yes, they can
And
impose their own stuff on it.
yes, that's right. And so I went out that way, and I went to Surat and in June and Mitchell and all those sort of places, and with Alone. And yes, it went down really well. And they were so welcoming and happy to see me. It was just wonderful. So I'm hoping to go back with Consequences.
Country Australia is one of the most welcoming places. I
It
find
is.
if you're trying to go right into the heart of Country Australia, they can be a bit like, oh, what are you doing? But if you are there and if you're in any kind of need, I was broken down a couple of months ago and I had about 5 or 6 different people stop and be like, hey, you okay? And I'm like, we've got a tow coming. It's okay, but thank you. Oh.
Yes, they are very welcoming. And then I went and based myself in Chinchilla and went to various places as well another time in this last year. And there again, it was just wonderful. So book Barcaldine is the only other place that features in Consequences that comes up, and of course Roma and Brisbane, but yeah, no particular places otherwise.
What made you base your books in Queensland?
Well, Alone was based in Queensland because my husband and I did the rail trip from Brisbane up to Longreach, which we'd been to Longreach before, but I really fancied doing the train trip. I thought that'd be great fun. And while we were there, we met another couple. My husband's was a retired farmer, and we met this couple who also were retired farmers, and farmers get together and they chat. And I was talking to the wife, and she and her husband had moved from a really outback, remote area into the outskirts of Chinchilla. And they were finding it very hard to cope because suddenly they got neighbours and they got cars on the road and all sorts of things they just weren't used to. And it had broken their hearts, I think, to sell the cattle and all the rest of it. And they'd had a Brahman cattle stud. So I chatted to her for some time, and she gave me the inspiration to write Alone, because I just was thinking about, being out in a remote area, and that's what set it off. But I have a love affair with Australia anyway, so it's quite easy to base my books in Australia, although not all of them are. The first book I wrote sort of goes from Australia to the UK and then backwards and forwards. Possession is mostly set in the UK, but it does end up in Australia. Traveling, I was inspired to write that by a friend who said, why don't you write a travel book? I thought, well, that's a bit boring, and there's so many travel books out there anyway. So I just put a different spin on traveling in Australia, really, and wrote it as a story, not as a travel book. But all the places in the book are places I've actually been to. And then Families is based really in the UK.
I've noticed Families has a very different cover to the rest of your books.
Yeah.
Still got the strong female presence in it, but it definitely looks a little bit more like a romance book from the cover that I see anyway.
Yes, I wasn't happy with the cover, and that wasn't with Shoreline, that was with another publisher that I've since given the heave-ho to. I wasn't happy about quite a few things, actually. So that was why I ended up going with Shoreline. But yes, I mean, that I based it in the UK because I understood how the health system works better there than I did here. That's why it's based in the UK. But then Alone is totally Australian. Consequences is totally Australian. Then the next one after that, which is called Inheritance, which will be out next year, is half and half. And then the next one, which the publishers have got the manuscript for, which I finished a little while ago, it's called Lost, and that's entirely in Australia. It's an Australian story.
That's beautiful. It sounds like you definitely have a love affair with Australia. Absolutely. Now, tell me a bit about what you'll be speaking about at the Logan Writers Festival.
Well, I thought I would speak about, because I said it would be about the inspiration. So I will sort of talk about each book that I've written and what inspired me to write it and how I got the ideas. and where they come from. I'm not too sure always, but and the children's book as well. I will also talk about the inspiration for that. So
Excellent.
that's what I
Wonderful.
thought
I'm
I'd.
from my memory, I'm pretty sure you're in the story behind the story marquee.
Yeah,
So yeah, you'll be able to discuss all of the background and all of the inspiration for these novels, which I think a lot of people ask authors, where do you get your inspiration from?
I do.
Yeah, it's just such a common question, as if inspiration isn't just woven into the very fabric of reality. But where do you find that how would you answer that question? That's probably a better way to phrase it.
Sorry, now I've got a cough.
No,
Um,
I mentioned the coughing fit and now it's infectious.
so sorry, what was the question?
So the question is, how do you answer when people ask you, where do you get your inspiration from?
I find inspiration everywhere. I'm just one of those. I'm a people watcher anyway. But like with Alone, I was just talking to that lady. Inheritance, which is out next year. It was just a throwaway remark somebody made when I was having a conversation with them. So yes, I think I've just got a quirky mind, really, that turns people's remarks into a story.
Wonderful. It can be something that simple though, which is it's absolutely incredible how your mind will catch these tiny ends of a floating thread, and then all of a sudden it just weaves a tapestry before your eyes.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, Lost, which is the manuscript the publisher has accepted, and that could probably be out in 2023, I would think. That was a program on television, which actually blew me away. And it was also a very sad story. But it was about a lady that it was a UK story, but it was about a lady that had disappeared. Suddenly, she just walked out, and they couldn't find her. And it was I was interested in the impact that it had on the family. You know, this I think she wasn't as she was in her 60s, I think, but she just walked out. She was going to the doctors and she never made it to the doctors and she just disappeared.
Oh wow.
And it was the impact that it had on friends and family and everything. So it was that sparked my interest to write Lost.
Hmm.
But it's not about a lady walking out at all, but that was the inspiration behind the story.
Hmm. The impact that that those sorts of conditions can have on a family. I feel like a lot of like, that story may not have happened if the community was very well connected. People would have been able to see things and keep an eye out, but we get so disconnected these days that that's one of the reasons the Writers' Festival is happening, because the author community in Logan is very separate. You have a lot of different groups, a lot of people that are published through different people, and a lot of stories that don't need repeating because these lessons can be passed from the authors within the entire collective. So I think that by helping each other and strengthening the community, we can protect one another as well.
That's right. I'm sure you're right.
Mm.
Yes, because writing really is a very lonely occupation.
It's very solitary.
Yes, you're just in that sort of little bubble, and yes, everything else sort of passes you by when you're really into it. So yeah, that's very good. Good to hear.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for joining me with me today. This has been beautiful to hear your insights and your love affair with Australia, especially the outback. It's absolutely charming. And I hope that we can catch up again soon. And you can come and see Gillian at the Logan Writers Festival on the 10th and 11th of September. She'll be speaking in the Behind the Story marquee. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you very much, Rihanna. It's been a pleasure.